All right, hello everybody. Hi. I'm going to make a video that's a little bit different than the ones I usually go on about my human sciences of Gaia humanism and sociology and all that stuff. I'm going to talk about myself. I'm going to talk about my story because as I was walking home a little while ago from the market, I was thinking about something which I'm going to get into now. And I realized something. I realized that my story is teaching me, showing me something that has happened to the world. And at that moment, I thought, I gotta write, I gotta talk about this. um, Writing about it would be better, um, but I'm not a writer, so. So, anyways, I was waiting for the bus, and I started thinking about, I'm in a good mood. I'm not particularly feeling like I want to get out of here or anything. But I have kind of been consolidating my decision making process to try to return to Hawaii at some point, save up money, buy my ticket, and take Kalele back with me, and maybe perhaps try to go to Kauai, which is the island of my heart of the Hawaiian Islands, is the one where I have a special connection to, and anyway, so I was thinking about that. At the same time, I was looking at where I was waiting for the bus here in Italy, in this small city Orte I live at, and thinking it's not so bad. It's just that Italians are great, and everybody knows me around here. So I get, hey Patrick, and people give me rides. Now they pull over when they see me with market bags, supermarket bags, and they'll give me a ride. So all that is, I've earned my acceptance, you could say. But I started thinking about other things, and I think it's worth talking about to get a point across. Still, I when I speak Italian, I have a heavy Spanish accent, and sometimes when I want to say complicated things, or I get desperate to sort of explain something that's a little difficult to explain. I fumble with my grammar, and all that is fine. Everybody who moves to another country does that, I suppose. But then I started thinking, and this is what I mean by my story. I was born in the States to Argentinian parents. My dad got into learning English fairly well, and he was all into making friends with Americans and having American friends, especially to do with work and business and his businesses and stuff. He dealt with the public more. Mom did the opposite. She enclosed herself in a kind of a Argentinian bubble, and so she could get by if she had to talk, but she hated being forced to talk. She would go shopping and she would just show dresses and take out her credit card. So anyways, that was my bringing up. I spoke Spanish at home with my sister and the housekeeper and everybody. My grandmother, that was a little Argentinian island. And then I went to Argentina as my parents decided that my sister and I should go to school there, and they stayed in America, but I went to grammar school and Vivi went to high school for about 7 years. And then we came back in time to go to high school. So my brain got kind of split because even though we spoke Spanish at home, I started going to kindergarten in first and second grade in the States before I went to Argentina. And so my brain is pretty truly bilingual, and also my development. Well, I don't want to focus on that too much. My point is that when I was thinking about going to Hawaii, back to Hawaii, I remembered why I left, and I'm going to be really honest. Some people do not want to accept this, but I get a thrill out of being brutally honest sometimes. I guess there must be a necessary place for it sometimes. Perhaps I could be more tactful or find the right occasion, but this is in this instance it's necessary. And Hawaiians, you don't see it. They don't talk about it. If you go live in Hawaii, you don't want to talk about it because you want to be happy and you want to live your fantasy of living, and but the truth is, and you notice it as soon as you go there on a moving to Hawaii mode instead of a visiting tourist mode, that the locals look at you like saying, like they're examining you, like they're going to give you the go ahead or not. That becomes apparent as soon as the locals. What are the locals? The locals are basically people who self-identify as locals because they have a Pacific Islander blood. They have maybe one or two generations or more of having been born on the islands. So basically, not because you're brown skin, you can call yourself local, but they're not the original Hawaiians either. They may be Filipino or Chinese descent with some Hawaiian blood that is hard to specify. So what defines a local is really a contemporary definition that really is described more by a majority immigrant Pacific Islander, Pacific Rim of Western Pacific Rim people that immigrated to Hawaii, Portuguese. And, they speak of themselves as either Portuguese, Filipino, or Japanese. In any case, the locals are clearly, however complex it may sound, it's simple when you're there. And basically it has to do with how you sound. If you're local, if you're even first generation Hawaiian and son of Filipinos and Japanese, not even really a Tongan or a Samoan descent person or Hawaiian, you speak local, pidgin English kind of local, which is a specific accent. And so there is a social situation in Hawaii. And the reason I left is because for me, it never went very well. And some people learn how to handle it. Some people just kind of smile a lot, and they also actually convince themselves of a narrative. I do know that the Hawaiian Islands were unlawfully, they were bamboozled. The Hawaiian Kingdom was usurped, was taken by the Americans. That's undeniable. But, perhaps I'm somebody who's more of a globalist and a humanist. Therefore, I understand that we all have something to do with what happens to us. We all share in what ends up happening to each one of us. It's not just somebody doing something to somebody else only, and one person being the victim and the other person being, no, we usually create situations. And so because I have that kind of way of looking at life and the world, although I do believe there are people who bear the greater responsibility or the greater fault, I don't just surrender to saying, bad person, hate them, good person, they're the victims. That's not how I view life or political situations. But I have a problem with my mother's hate. My mom had a situation. She hated, loved, love-hate thing. She was vicariously venting out on her male child problems she had, perhaps with her dad. And at the same time, she loved me, of course, because she was my mom. But she was very violent, and she was very violent, physically violent, and always violent, psychologically violent, absolutist. In her way of always being the biggest thing that was happening in 10 miles around. And so I have a thing where if I see animosity, if I see hostility or violence, I'm drawn to it. I want to conquer it, win it over, have them like me, and this comes from that. It's very deep psychologically. And as soon as I got to Hawaii, I did all that. I thought that I was going to be the most genuine person to my local neighbors. And the first experiences I had right away is they just hated me. They just didn't like me, and I didn't understand why. I was alone with my dog, and I did all the wrong things. I walked into somebody's neighborhood and somebody's garden with my dog, and you know, they who told who you know, they just treat you, they bully you. Okay, I don't want to get into the details and try to convince you of something that is plain. And if you're really honest with yourself, you know it's true. The Hawaiians mistreat people who sound from the mainland. They make you feel like they have authority over you. They bully you. They try to get to intimidate you, and eventually, without get you know, long story short, third time I was, or second time I had gone back to Hawaii, I had a bad experience. My neighbors, and again, they always hate you for no reason. I think what it is that I know what I sound like. I know I probably sound like some fruitcake from Southern California or what have you, and they really hate that. You know, if you sound like a man that says few words and just stares back and holds his ground, and you know, then the Hawaiians all of a sudden, yeah, oh, you know, that's a real man. You know, keep your distance, respect him. Now we can deal with that guy. You know, but if you're somebody that sounds youthful, immature, playful, gay, or whatever, then they immediately find reason to mock you, to underestimate you, to ridicule you, and all their howly stuff. It's what they call white Americans or whites, whatever, comes up, and it all starts venting there, and all of a sudden, all the prejudicial mockingness that they're holding inside in general, that justifies all their feelings towards white or towards America, gets funneled to that person. And I got beat up by my neighbor for no reason, because I went up to them. They were chopping down. They came to the front of my house, where there's a strip of land that's both public, and the owner of the land also has a right to take care of it. And so it's sort of a buffer area, which normally is respected. And I've been kicked out violently out of somebody else's buffer zone, a local man's buffer zone where lilikoi was growing, because I had no right to get close to his fence. And he almost beat me up in the middle of the street. But when the tables were turned and it was my house, these neighbors of mine felt they could come cut down some branches for their goats, which actually I didn't have a problem with. I just, like I said, I just wanted to establish rapport all the time. And they just thought that was, they mocked that. They didn't see me for the person I am. They just thought some pathetic little thing that wants to try to be friends with them. But they would always wave hello from their cars. You know, they just play with people. And anyways, I don't want to dwell on this, but you know, I approached them. I wanted to see if we could talk about how they were going to cut it, if you could just not cut too close, because I needed the shade to fall on my garden, so my garden didn't get singed by the sun. But I didn't even get to that conversation. The guy, you know, he puts down his chainsaw and starts, what do you want? And before I know it, the other guy who was sitting in the car just jumped out and started bashing my head and kicking me on the ground. And you know, after this experience, mind you, the guy in the truck, ironically, was somebody from the South, that was working with them, living on their land or whatever. I guess he wanted to prove them that he could be just as hateful towards fruitcake Howley or whatever. And to me, it was the same. It's what they wanted to do. It happened with another guy who was a little bit more of a more mature guy. He did the same thing. He started shouting at me, but you know, when I try to just talk, no, I just wanted to tell you this or that, he listened and he said, fuck off, whatever. And when it happened the second time, it didn't go down well. But in any case, after this experience, you know, it all came up, and I realized, fuck, one lives here afraid of these people. I mean, it's like a thing that you have to deal with. You have to live there. I got assaulted, like, you know, bluff, maybe not bluff, gonna beat the crap out of you once at the because I was hanging my clothes out by the public spigot, drying. Everybody washes their hair, washes their clothes there, but it was easy to pick on Fruitcake, Howley, and these two guys. This whole situation happened with somebody who I thought was my friend, and he just, in order to survive in this situation, this segregated situation, you have to be a smart man, I suppose. Decided that he was going to side with them. And so from being friendly with me and talking with me, he turned around and said, "Why are you such a kook?" And what? I said, "Neil, why are you calling me a kook? We were just talking fine, and now you jumped on their side instead of saying, 'Hey, leave him alone' or something." And that made me understand the quiet, unspoken intimidation white Americans live under in order to be okay, in order to not have to confront or deal with this intense, intense hate. Even the locals that are, civil and have Howley friends and hang out with Howleys or white people, and they call themselves, they see themselves as not one of the backwards, aggressive, males. In Honolulu, of course, you don't see this as much as you do in some areas of the outer islands. The places that are more sort of their land, their territory, is where they become more hostile, more aggressive, and treat Howleys worse. It's a huge subject, and it's huge not only because it actually is very huge. Everybody that goes to live in Hawaii learns that is going on, and adapts, acquires an MO, a modus operandi, a way of existing that way because they want to live in Hawaii. So there's all these, we are visitors, we're humble visitors, bad America, they stole the islands from you, and we agree with you. And so the Hawaiians go, okay, good. So as long as we're clear about that, right? So that has to be the not stated premise on which you are there. You're kind of like on the side of Hawaiians without even being interested in the subject or needing to say anything about it. You have to act and put that demeanor out. If you are somebody who, some right wing ignorant redneck, just to give you an idea, that believes, no, it's too late. We these are islands. These are our islands now. You lost. You didn't fight. We screw you. Whatever. You don't say it. You never say it, but you embody that spirit. It's only a matter of time before that hate comes down on you and you get into a fight, or they, you end up lonely. If you want to exist socially in Hawaii, you have to adapt I'm sorry, yes, whatever, you're the boss, you're the king. And so the Hawaiians go around with their big pickups and they feel that they're still the boss, and so that social situation is kind of something that is happening, and it kind of fizzles down because you see that it's so beautiful living there, and you can share, the Hawaiians, they don't want you going to their beaches, and you just don't go there. You go to beaches where there aren't any Hawaiians. And so it's very real. As far as a segregated situation is absolutely real. I mean, if you approach a beach where Hawaiians go, they will all turn and look at you like, what are you doing here? And nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to admit that is, in fact, it becomes something like, you better learn the rules, otherwise it's your fault. If you don't know how to respect their beaches, and then you have the problem. You are the ones that has hate, and you are the one that you're the hater. The whites, the Americans will turn it on you if you say, hey, I didn't do anything, and they beat the crap out of me. Well, you must have done something, because they have to convince themselves of that storyline in order to exist peacefully, in order to not deal with it. Anyway, so just wanted to describe that. And so I've been thinking about this a lot as I'm thinking, well, I'll just go back to Kauai and I'll have a fresh start. I'll have a more mature attitude. I won't be looking to be accepted and liked like whites do, which they just kind of hang out with themselves. They don't try to have Hawaiian friends. They don't try to win over their neighbors. So I won't do that anymore. And I'll have the friends that I did have local friends, guys that whatever, they weren't into hating whites. And we were into doing other stuff together, smoking pot or what have you. And, but so I'll just hone my senses better. And I was thinking about that. And then I was thinking about how really, my heart, my personality, what the Hawaiians never saw. They hated me because I sounded like an American, but really I'm Argentinian. I'm totally in my cradle. I was spoken to and raised by Argentinians, and if something happens, a soccer match or a political dispute or whatever it is, it's like immediately that's where it shows. It's like whether they're the underdog or whether they have to be protected. I want them to grow. I want them to solve their problems. America will figure it out. But with Argentinians, it's like my heart, my soft spot, my real identity, and the I don't know if identity is not the right word. I misused that word. My real, I would just say heart. And because my identity is American, and so I'm getting to what this video is about slowly. And if I go to Argentina and I speak Spanish, nobody thinks twice where I'm from. When I speak English, if you're somebody who not a second generation American or somebody from the city and the area where you grew up around a lot of immigration, but from New England and everybody's an English teacher in your family, you detect that there's something, in the way I speak. Your parents were immigrants, right? But all in all, I'm in the standard because a vast number of us in America are like this. We don't speak New English, several generation English American. We speak this colloquial kind of internet English, and it's good enough. Some of us speak actually well if we think about every word that we say that we want to use. But that's where I was born, and a lot of the part of my brain, like the part where it's ambitious about achieving something, and or improving a building, coming up with a solution, coming up with an innovative solution to something. The analysis, the social, logical analysis of things, and there's a part of my brain which is American. It's not Argentinian. Argentinians are, hey, just have a glass of wine and relax. But I gotta always sort of turn it upside down and try to see what's wrong with it, and so everything that is interested in that part of how to bring better solutions to the world, how to solve problems, international problems, and that is definitely American. My interest, even for Argentinian politics, is my American side. My interest for Argentina resolving and having justice being done to it regarding the Malvinas, Falkland Islands, is an American part of me. It's not. It doesn't settle for just raising my voice and fighting. I actually want to grab the British and sit them down and say, no, you got to talk about this. Look at what you're doing here. Why don't you recognize this or that? That's very American. And yet it's for Argentina. So I think about going back to Argentina and just really finding my peace there. And the funny part is that when I was growing up, I never came off as American because my parents raised me. So I act and I just, come off as Argentinian when I'm in Argentina. But as soon as I say that I was born in the States, or people start, gossiping, telling you, oh no, he's actually born in America. His parents were immigrants in the States, whatever. or he just came back from America. He hasn't been here for 20 years, or they say stuff like that. Then all of a sudden they acquire a little bit of a, so you're an American, and so there's that whole discussion. But then when I talk, they can't affirm that I'm American because something about me is undisputably Argentinian when I'm there and when I'm speaking Argentinian Spanish. So that argument, they can never win that argument if they try to prove me, even though I wasn't born there. I don't even have an ID card. This is very interesting, and I learned a lot about the substance, the things that constitute what your nationality is. Is it based on heart? Is it based on a piece of paper? And that whole subject has become very interesting to me because of personal experience. And so, but that's not what I want to talk about now. I learned about patriotism. Patriotism, obviously, I'm very Argentinian patriotically, but I'm also American patriotically, kind of in second place. I'm also an Italian citizen, but I realized that I can't jump up and down and say, yeah, let's win this game at a soccer match for Italy. And that has to do with respect, because I'm very honest and aware of, even though my grandparents, all four of them on my dad's side, are Italian, my last name is Italian, I'm Argentinian Italian, I became a citizen here when I was already an adult. I was 35 or something. When I actually took I had been living here on and off, and I finally got my citizenship. And so I am technically, on paper, and as far as Social Security and the responsibility of the state and so forth, I'm Italian as much as I am American. Not Argentinian. They don't care if I disappear. Isn't that ironic? It's great. And so this is what I want to talk about. At some point when I was waiting for the bus, I thought, you know what? There's just so many people like me right now in the world. So many people like me that, you try to live in Hawaii and you love, oh my God, I wanted to study hula. I wanted to plant coconuts everywhere for them. I'm not leaving children there. I loved Hawaii. I wanted to be part of every single social group and learn hula and learn Hawaiian and be friends with all the Hawaiians. And how ironic that they didn't care that I loved Hawaii. They didn't care at all. They beat the crap out of me. Then in other cases, I also love Argentina and would do the same thing for Argentina as I would for Hawaii. But nothing. But nothing. They probably would let me because they see me as Argentinian. Start some kind of animal rights group and stuff like that. And America also, but what happened in America, I had a very, very unfortunate story. Part of the story is very unfortunate with the States, because somehow, first it was because my neighbor was angry at me because I was playing loud music, and so he wanted to inflict fear and harm. And so he called the police on me and ratted me for a marijuana plant I had hanging out of and oh boy, here we go. They lie. He comes over. Do you mind if I take a look? Not really. He put his foot inside the door. He's not supposed to. He made it so they act like they're not going to harm you. They're not going to scare you. It was arrogance. And before you know it, he threw me in the police car. I had experiences with American police, which to me make no sense. I never dealt drugs. I've never robbed anybody. I never mugged or shot anybody. I've never done anything that you would say this is a person that always gets in trouble. He's always picking a fight and leaving bloody people around the street. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It was just a system that is obsessed. Again, another thing that happened in my life that to me only makes sense that they've happened to me so that I would learn about things that are how things are happening in the world. Nothing else makes sense, because it was that. Then it was because I raised my voice to stand up for my friend. We all got pulled over because the people that were driving were drunk or something. We got to the party. The party was over, and the police were there that had been called. We arrived late. We weren't even at the party, and they got us to get out of the car. And before my gay friend, he was all indignified because he was being shoved around by one of the police, and I said, "Hey, why are you treating him like that? He's answering you. He's being respectful." And oh, we have a hero here, and he called his buddy over, and they're just so abusive, and they have so much anger, and they want to vent that anger as any justification they can construe out of a situation. And these experiences happen over and over. God knows I've done things that they could have. I've been behind the steering wheel with a few drinks more than once. I never got pulled over, not a single DUI. It was only weird, contorted, unnecessary aggravation, like, or being, they wanted to check your record while you were standing outside a 7-Eleven, and they found out that I hadn't showed up to court. All passive stuff, non-violent stuff, somehow led to, I don't know how many times, going to spend the night in the police station. One time, a police officer comes in and he puts because I was so angry in the police car that I tried to be hurtful, in the back of the police car. I was 20. And I guess a big baby went and complained to his buddies at the station. So in the middle of the night, this huge black guy comes in, puts on a glove, and smacks me across the holding cell because he wanted to teach me a lesson to not talk back to police officers. I mean, what they're actually talking about on the news does not even describe what the real problem, psychological problem they have in how they treat their own citizens, their own people. So the point that I'm making is, eventually, I got, one time I spent 15 days for, it was, if I go look it up, it was probably ridiculous. Nothing, oh yeah, driving on a suspended license. I got given 15 or 20 days in a real county jail, with these people that are going around killing each other with tattoos. I was 22 or something, and easy prey for God knows what. I could have run my mouth, said the wrong thing to the wrong person. They throw you in there. And then another time, which really did it, which was the cherry that topped it. My mother wanted to get back at me because she was actually suffering from Alzheimer's already, and I was trying to take care of her and discovering how in what bad shape her health actually was. And I was sleeping in the couch, and I managed to change her doctor, and I changed her hospital to one that we could walk to, Cedars, which was close to the house. And I tried to improve her healthcare situation. She was obese, and the maid doesn't speak English, and she had been giving her Prozac, or one of these things that you read the label and it says do not give more than 3 months or it can cause harm. The maid had been giving it to her for 3 years. And I look at Angela and I go, do you realize that this is killing her kidneys? In fact, my mom developed kidney infection. Anyways, my mom, high strung, is not docile. She would not let me take care of her. So I kind of did things while I was sleeping on the couch, and she hated it. She hated it, and sometimes she'd just lose it, and she wanted to be alone with her housekeeper and watch TV together or whatever. She didn't want to be bothered. She didn't want to be told how to take better care of herself. And so one day she said something about my father and about, I don't know, there was something about Jews. And I said, oh, some documentary. And I kind of stood up for the Jewish argument about that, whatever documentary we were watching. And then she said something really mean. And we started fighting, and I raised my voice, and I got really agitated, and I think I slammed like a piece of furniture or something. Like I was on medication to cure a hepatitis C, and which says it can also. But in any case, it really didn't get past that. But my mom saw an opportunity to use the police, which he had done before on my father, to call them over and get you in trouble, you know, and lie and say something. So the police came, and the police didn't come right away. She was trying to agree with Angela, who was in the kitchen. I'm telling a story for a reason. I'll explain why. That they were going to say that I hit her. So it was important that Angela, so she would say to my mom, "Did you see he hit me?" And I'm like, "What? Why are you telling me? What are you doing?" And Angela was trained to lie for her. She would just lie for her easily. Like she didn't want to see somebody at the door, or if she wanted to tell somebody that she was out of town on the phone, Angela would just automatically do it for her. And so she was concocting this, and I try to get ahead of the situation. I try to be smart and call the ambulance so that the ambulance would come, and, you know, they would surround her with, you know, taking her pressure, and said maybe she was having like a cholera attack. She was really agitated, and we were screaming, you know, and so in California, if you call for an ambulance, if somebody's hurt, and the operator, I don't know if it's still this stupid, but I think it may still be, they try to pry out of you and find out if it's a domestic dispute. Because if it's a domestic dispute, then we gotta get on top of these violent people and suppress them. And so the police has to be dispatched if the 911 operator suspects. And so I said, no, she's breathing heavy, and, you know, all the stuff that was really happening to her. I wasn't going to say because we were having a fight, because it was irrelevant. I wanted the ambulance to come. And when the operator, you know, asked, you know, well, we were arguing, I said, oh, you were having an argument? So they categorized that as domestic dispute. They send the police over. When the police came, Mom had actually gotten out and started walking around outside. And I met them, out on the sidewalk. One of them supposedly believed he spoke Spanish and went in to speak to Angela. Now, Angela had been told to say that I hit her, but I know Angela. Angela knows me since I'm 3 years old. She's like a nana. She's like my auntie. She was really struggling with this. While I was in the house, I would look at her after Mom would tell her, say that he hit me, and I would go, Angela, you just saw that I didn't. And she would just freak out because she had to do what Mom told her, but at the same time she would look at me like saying, yeah, I know she didn't, but whatever, and then would go in the kitchen. I wasn't able to be there, so when the police went in by themselves, you know, and of course the police want to hear that. They want to hear that something concrete that justifies their protocol actually happened. So they made it happen. When Mom came back from Melrose, from the street where she was, she came straight to me and the police. The police told me to go by the car and spoke to her. And when the officer asked her, did he hit you? Mom was going like, oh, she couldn't lie to, because at that moment her maternalness was fighting with her scheming side, and she has Alzheimer's, and she was like, oh no, I don't remember, whatever. And so the police officer, where did he hit you? He really wanted this to happen. And she went like this, because when we were arguing and flying, and, you know, our arms were flying around the place, her glasses dropped, and she, you know, you made me drop my glasses or whatever. And so she wanted to use that, and she was kind of going like that, but there were no marks. There was nothing on my mom, you know? And so it wasn't enough to show something, a spot where she had been hit or anything, but it was enough for them because they need to work. They need to have these things be formalized so they can get their paycheck. And so half of America is incarcerated because they have to have this country not get better, but formalized in all its violence. And so after this, I got interrogated by two women. I'm going to say this, why not be honest? They were lesbian, apparently. It appeared that way because they just hated me. And they said that and I'll tell you why else I'm saying this. Because they came to see me at my holding cell the following morning after they had gone to check out the situation at home. Of course, they didn't find my mother with any bruises or anything. But they had to make a case. And this is what's happening in America. They have to make a case. Lawyers have to fulfill the purpose of their job. This is incredible because that means that anybody can, report or denounce anybody. And if you have somebody who's ambitious or angry or determined or cynical enough, there's just a field of ways that you can build a case or build a justification. And that's what these ladies did, because they came back and they said, why was your mom sleeping on the floor then? If you're not some freeloading, abusive, violent person who's taking all her money and using her, right? That's what they wanted to build. And I go, Mom doesn't sleep on the floor. She can't get up because she's obese. She has, the bed only on the box, and that way she can get up easier. And she's not sleeping in the living room. The living room is her bedroom. They thought, because I also slept, there's one little room that was Angela's, but Angela and I would take turns between the couch and the little room, depending if Angela wanted to stay up taking care of Mom and I was tired, so I would just go to the room. But other times I would just pass out on the couch. In any case, the bed with a big TV in front of it and all the nice furniture from Thailand surrounding it, that was Mom's bed. And the main sleeping area of the whole apartment, you could see that just by looking around a little bit. But they had a story that they needed to create, and it was that I took her bedroom. My mother never slept in Angela's bedroom, ever, because that was the maid's room. Supposedly, I took that bedroom away from her so that I could sleep there in the only formal room that had a door, and made her sleep in the living room on the floor in front of a big TV set. It makes no sense, but they had to see that. And I went to county jail for almost a month. I don't know if you've ever been to jail, but it's super, super traumatic. You're inside a concrete box. In jail, I got hit and given a bloody nose because somebody wanted me to do business with my food, and I said, no, I don't want to get into it. And he ordered my cellmate to punch me in the face. Now, I'm not saying that I'm, a little gentle flower of society or anything like that. But it is not an exaggeration to visualize the amount of people who are just normal people, who never get into fights, who never go beating around and beating up anybody, who would, never do something really dastardly, like have somebody get hit so they can steal something, or like a criminal, a thug. Normal people who went to high school and went to college and speak 3 languages, or speak 2 languages, and are educated and have good, well-behaved friends, are in American jails, possibly being given drugs, punched by one of their cellmates, shown horrible things. The next day, some guy was dragged out half dead because his cellmate was either instructed to, like mine was, or did it because he got tired of him, but was choking him. And we could hear the guy gurgling. And, people don't know the nightmare that is actually happening in the American justice penitentiary system. And so, as a result, just to make the story short again, or end the story, I was, of course, at this restraining order, and I started slowly talking to Mom on the phone and saying, Mom, we got to go to court with me again. This is terrible. They want to hang a felony on me, and they want to do all this stuff, and they pile up laws like they love to. They just love to see how much can we punish them, how long can we put them in jail for, And that's their modus operandi. Then they start dropping stuff, but that's what keeping themselves busy is all about: punishment. And how much can we? And then they sculpt back, they carve back from that. But that's what it's about, and that's what's really sick about it, that it's all about punishing, like the Puritan era. It's all about, lashing the citizen. It's not about finding the truth. If it had been about finding the truth, and this guy that spoke Spanish had been truly in touch with how Latino people are, he knew they just had a loud fight. He didn't hit her. She probably said that so that she could get him in trouble. Tell his partner the truth, and nothing would have happened. But because the mindset is that the citizen is the enemy, and we got to build a case and make it happen, half of America, there's like 7 million people or 8 million people in the justice, helping the wheels of generating money through the penitentiary justice system, keeping lawyers and judges and everybody employed and making money by tormenting American citizens. So eventually it got to me. I can't think of living in a place like LA anymore, because I'm not going to go in there with my protective Mercedes-Benz that keeps me in a well-off strata of society that will where I can sort of, yes, officer, what can I do for you? Oh, I'm so sorry. Could I please see your ID? No, I'm not going to be there. I'm going to be down walking under the radar of these people that need to work all the time, because that's what was happening for years. And so now I'm completely traumatized. I'm afraid of living in an American city and just being one of the, God forbid, I go to a shelter. Oh my God, use a county shelter is like asking to go to jail, because you walk out of there and they're looking at you, or because you're always going to be, detected as walking around in that environment. And so if they see you walking in another part of town, hey, I see that guy downtown LA all the time, pull him over. What's he doing here in West LA? It's a constant thing. It's like a constant harassment of the street level people, which is a majority perhaps. Not everybody is middle upper class, or at least a third of the population. And you know what? I have no doubt that thousands of people would give similar testimonies of what it's like to live in America. But we're also being sort of culturally trained to think this is the way things are, violence, 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 guns, 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 right to have guns, shootings. And so, they don't. But you know what? When you go travel to European countries, for example, and you see the respect with which citizens are treated, police officers, and there's always a little bit of that arrogant kind of John Wayne thing, that happens. It's a psychological phenomenon that has with not really wanting the power of the gun against your own people. It causes a way of self-defense, self-preservation that results in arrogance, but that's not what I want to talk about right now. Majoritively, or more predominantly, what you notice is a respect for people, not a desire to see them as a candidate for your protocol to work, and how many people, Vanessa Marquez was ill. She was ill. She had psychological problems. What is wrong with these people? They deployed all these officers. They filled her house with gun-bearing officers, and they ended up, of course, killing her. Having a gun will eventually lead to somebody getting killed because that's what they're made for. Guns is killing people. So if you send a whole bunch of people trained to know how to use guns in fear of making sure that they're able to use it well when if they have to use it, and this poor little thing stupidly thought that she could diffuse the situation or defend herself and showed a BB gun. They they riddled her with bullets, or they shot her and killed her or whatever, instead of saying she's got a BB gun. They weren't able to do that because they're not in touch with the humanity of their own people anymore. So when you go to a European country, you notice, or any country, I bet even in China and Iran, you notice that the police have much more respect for their own citizens. Then the police are laughing. They're laughing about their meanness. What country in the world are they laughing about their own meanness in situations where they confront citizens? So anyways, so going back to my story. So we have that situation with, I would maybe consider New York, because New York is very different to the West Coast as far as this situation goes. Police are, we have violence incidents and justice and corruption and what have you, like everywhere else. But the manner, the way in which you live in the city is different in places like New York, at least in New York I remember, than living in a place where, like Arizona or Los Angeles, where it seems like the whole city is the police's parking lot. I'm not kidding. They just pull over there and they just, Hawaii is kind of like, they have that sort of far west kind of, John Wayne thing. They can just throw their police car on your lawn. There's no need to respect people. So I don't know where their trainers are coming from, but in New York, there seems to be a little bit more of a humanity, more of a back and forth. So I would consider maybe living in New York, but definitely I would never go back to LA or San Diego or Arizona, even places that are a little better, perhaps like Portland or Seattle, maybe San Francisco, but I just, no. Even Hawaii is something that you don't worry, Patrick, as long as, you don't get any trouble, you won't have to face that, But it's that attitude, that way of acting towards, towards the people, towards the country's people, towards their own citizens, is taught, apparently, because Hawaiians are not so much like that. I mean, they're Filipino, they're Pacific Islanders. They have other stuff, that has to do with arrogance and bullying socially. But I don't see that their police would be so machine-like, like it has happened in California or in Arizona, Louisiana, or the West, the South, and yet they seem like almost a caricature that came off island and landed on Hawaii. When you see the way they talk and they treat people, the way they have to come around one person with 7 or 8 cars, they have to pull over one girl and it's like 6 cars around her. They rough her up and throw her in the back of the, just like they would in Arizona. It's insane. They can't deal with another human being, It's very, very challenging, I guess, for American police to deal with another human being. So what I'm getting at, and what this whole thing is about, although it took up some time so disproportionately, is that at some point while I was waiting at the bus stop, and I started thinking, well, it's like this when I go to Argentina, and it's like this when I go to Hawaii, and if I try to go back to California, I would prefer to go back to New York. It's like this and like that, and if I stay here, or maybe I can go to Spain, and what would it be like in Spain? I realized at one point that there's just millions of people that have similar stories, and yet it is completely unnatural and how can I say this? It can never be the case of somebody not having a homeland, a country that it's your people, you're comfortable, you're the boss, along with the other 30 million people who live in that country, and the police work for you, and you know what I mean? It's just a normal country. Um, how come I don't have that? How come it's this strange? Every single place presents a different situation, and it is because of this modern world of massive communication and immigration, people's lives being spread out in 3 or 4 different countries or places, resulting in these kinds of testimonies. And what I realized waiting at the bus was that it is the normal, or as they say now, the new normal. It is, okay, I shouldn't feel intimidated or scared or like I don't belong or I don't have a country. We are the country. It is our world. We make institutions. We design governments. It's, not, I'm right. I'm not out of place. Unfortunately, it is those governments, those institutions, those countries that have a problem dealing with the new kind of people that are starting to populate the world. So I'm one with 8 billion people, a humanity that is changing, who perfectly belongs and owns, in a sense, this world, this planet of ours. We are right. We're correct where we are. It is everything else that needs to catch up. It is the way we look at citizens, the way we treat citizens, the distribution of power and the proportional distribution of resources through government and administration that has to catch up. It is not us that have to conform to a man-made invention, which is a governmental institution or a form of government or what have you. It is they who have to adjust to being, treating well human beings or treating well humanity. And that's what I realized, that you are okay if you feel that this country or that country. No, this is what we are now. This is what we are now. We have many different shades and many different, it's already done. There's no different races or different nationalities. We're one humanity. We've been mixed. We've been getting mixed for over 2 centuries, and we just we still continue to try to make racial dispute issues and pass laws that try to bring fairness to this race or that. No, we're done already. We're the same. We're the same person in every country, in every race. It's always the same human being. And everything else has to cater to that. So, in other words, we shouldn't be talking about people being, because they're Asian, we need to create more laws because now injustice is falling on Asians as like it was on blacks before, and so now we still have to fine-tune this for blacks and this fine-tune this other group, and that gays this and the Jews that and that Muslims. It's always, all that is below people. People are the ones who make those things unnecessarily, because you can't divide something that is not, it makes no sense to divide something that's not divided, that is already one. I don't know. It was a little clearer before when I made the realization of now I'm running into a little difficulty, but I think you get the idea. We are okay. We have been mixed already. We are already one human being. That's what all these experiences have made me realize. They're at fault. The police institution here, the idea of the social idea of segregation caused by a political narrative of illegal annexation, the imperialist country that you actually belong to, and I'm not so sure if you're one of us, or you're only you're a foreigner immigrant because you speak with an accent and you don't have any family or friends here, or you came a few years ago. So, all of those ideas and institutions, manners in which we behave because of beliefs, and in ways in which we treat each other because of how institutions are configured, all of that stuff is below the single person, the single human being, which is already one. We are one already. And so we need to talk about people and how we're treating people in each one of these situations. How each one of these situations in Argentina, in Hawaii, in California, in New York, in Italy, and wherever it is, how we are treating a human being. Not somebody who came from this country or that country or is black or white or Asian or what have you. No, how are we treating a human being here? And so when you see the errors and the aggravations and the violence and the injustice and everything, realize that the fault lies there. The fault lies in the design of the institution and the wording of the law, in the principles that they think they can achieve through those procedures or protocols, in the way that education or healthcare or whatever is treated, or the way in which all the design of civilization, of institution, and ideologies are also designed ideas that are not treating, that start by looking at a plane of different categories instead of looking at first the human being that ought to not have been separated into categories. And therefore we are the ones doing the institutional ideology is the one that's making a mistake and trying to manage these groups of people, because there shouldn't be those groups of people to begin with. It's one human being. Anyways, okay, so I hope that I kind of made the point across. It didn't come out too clear, but by now I think you get what the architecture of the logic is. Thanks for listening. Sorry it was so long. So long.